All right, welcome back to the Parasocial Podcast. It feels like the most official intro I've ever recorded. But considering that I've been making so many other videos, I can more confidently call this the Parasocial Podcast because I have things to compare it to. But anyway, today I want to let me also record it on Otter. So today, I also want to, what was I going to say? Record it. This is going to be the video, is the transcription. Exciting stuff. But I want to get back to Visa's videos. He put one out with a title that I found very interesting, very compelling, very up my alley in terms of being something that I relate to and think about a lot. And I even posted about it on Twitter, asking people for their thoughts. So I figured might as well record a new episode and dig into it myself. Because the honest truth is, I hadn't listened to it yet, but I wanted to get other people's perspectives and get people chiming in. So this is going to be me now, listening, conversing with Visa's video from 3 days ago called "I Don't Want to Be a Sellout." So I think that's enough of a preamble. And let's just get right into it. I'm sure if I realize I need more preamble, I'll do it. So here we go.
For a bunch of reasons, right? Because
here we go.
Good morning, friends. So here's an idea. Any given person in whatever circumstance that they're in is stuck in that circumstance because of a bunch of factors, right? Constraints, limiting beliefs, assumptions, behaviors, patterns, and so on. Right? So, and the word stuck implies a stasis, a staticness that I don't necessarily want to imply, but it's just the sense of we are where we are for a bunch of reasons, right?
I will just say that it's interesting how this has begun, because he's talking very much. I mean, this is literally how we begin every single Shift 30 call. It's like, hey, let's take a few minutes and all of us reflect on where in our lives right now, whether in a large sense or a small sense, like daily, where are we feeling stuck? And one way to talk about the entire purpose of Shift 30 for 30 is to get unstuck, right? And that's coming from Eugene Genlin's a process model, his philosophy of the implicit, that everything actually is already in process. And if things are stuck, that's because the process is frozen for some reason. And if we give it space, then we can let that process resume, and that's the life process. So anyway, I think that Visa has been exploring Genlin a little bit. I remember him tweeting, not saying it in a video, after he finished and published Introspect, that he was reading Focusing finally. So anyway, interesting connections.
There are things that conspire, and again, the word conspire and the word stuck both have these negative connotations. Maybe I'll figure out better words eventually. But if you can avoid the connotation, everything conspires to put us where we are. Honestly, keep us where we are. But I'm reflecting on when I was younger, and I felt very trapped by my circumstances and my life and my habits and beliefs, and just life felt like a prison. It's one of the dominant themes of what I tried to talk about in my book. I thought I did a pretty decent job. I think I've gotten better at dealing with it. And it's kind of, there's something about appreciating where you are in space.
Also, very genuine. I've literally quoted this recently because it's such a favorite line from a process model. Let us appreciate this problem. It will solve itself below. And actually, that specific quote, he's working through some tricky philosophical stuff, and he says that. And he says it will solve itself below, obviously, in that case, referring to below in the text, right, on the next page, in the next paragraph. And then when I was going to tweet it, I was like, maybe I can just cut that word out, right, and just leave an ellipsis there. It will solve itself. It sounds better. But then I realized, Eugene Genlin is all about that listening to the body, getting out of one's head and out of one's thoughts only, listening to the wisdom of the body, realizing that the body actually knows so much more than our heads know. And so another way to read that is, let us appreciate this problem. Let us give that problem space and even love. I'm obviously adding that in there, but appreciation, right? Let us give it some sort of goodwill, and it will solve itself below, as in below our head, in the body, down below. It will solve itself underneath where we normally think problems need to be solved. It will solve itself if we give it space, as Visa is suggesting here, give it space, give yourself space, appreciate where you're at.
Right? And I'm reminded now, I wasn't expecting to bring this up, but I'm reminded of musical analogies, which is, when you're playing in a band, how do you sound, how do you be heard? Right, and I seem to recall a Paul Gilbert, is a guitar player, Paul Gilbert video where he's explaining to lead guitar players, soloists, right, how to have your solo be heard. And his point, if I remember correctly, was that you don't necessarily need to keep turning the volume up. Rather, being heard is about resonance with what is happening, and so it's being in tune, being in time, playing the accents and playing on the beat. And when something is on the beat, it shines, it kind of comes out, it rings, right? It's a resonance, it comes out. And
quick little personal reflection there is like something I've been learning and struggling with a little bit during Shift 30 calls is in running a group, right? And wanting to have the group be to some extent unstructured and wanting to hear from the entire group. Sometimes I kind of let people just talk on and on, or I open up the space for anyone to speak up, and then people talk over each other, right? And maybe one person wants to talk and they're maybe quieter, and they begin talking and someone kind of like talks over them, and so it's been a thing for me to learn is how to step in and be heard enough, be heard clearly enough to say, hey, no, actually let that person talk. We'll get to you later, right? But let's press pause on that right now. Let's let this other person talk. And to be able to speak in such a way that I'm heard over the top of both of those people, right? That's not an easy thing, especially for me. I'm coming from a background of being very, very shy and very, very quiet and very, very conflict averse. But I'm noticing and learning from the group as we go that it's not just about volume. the way to be heard is not just about volume, it's also about when you speak, how you speak, the tone with which you speak. Right? There are moments that you can enter the conversation within which you will be more heard because that person is in a moment of speaking that they're more receptive and they're listening more than they're speaking. Even when they're speaking fast, it's possible, right? There's even a level of confidence and resonance, as Visa says here, like just like a solidity to the way you can speak that cuts through whatever else is going on, right? You can speak in a very weak way at a high volume and be ignored. And you can also speak in a very strong, solid way at a low volume and have everyone perk up and listen to you, right? So it's not about volume. So it's really interesting what Visa is getting at here about being heard in the context of playing music.
So the more you are able to play with and on the beat, the more you bring out, right? Like I guess it's kind of like, again, if I hit a bell and it rings out, and if it's not encumbered by, if it's not muted, right? Like so, you want to unmute the thing. To unmute a sound when you're ringing out, whether it's a bell or a string or horn, whatever, it's the volume and the sense of volume comes from that resonance. It's a very long-winded explanation for what.
Also, another thing, in Shift 30 for 30, we are exploring and getting to become more sensitive to our felt sense, right? That inner voice, that really subtle, often quiet inner voice. And it's not about it's not that that voice has never been there, but we're learning how to listen. So so we are orienting ourselves to that inner voice so that it can speak at the same volume in us. And I say voice, I don't technically mean like it's saying words all the time, but just the felt sense. That's something that vague feeling, sometimes very subtle in our bodies. It's the same volume, it's the same intensity, but we can hear it now because we're tuned in. And it's obviously not the exact same thing that Visa is talking about here, but right, that still small voice in us doesn't need to speak louder in order to be heard, although that is what, for example, Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No, that's what that's about. When you don't listen to your body, when you don't pay attention, when you don't learn how to hear it when it whispers, it has to fucking yell at you, right? It has to give you fucking anxiety attacks. It has to give you cancer to be like, yo, listen the fuck up to me. I'm not doing well. Things are not going well. Life is not going well. Listen to me, right? And it has to yell. But if you can listen to it when it's quiet, then you can get at these things much earlier. And you can get the message much sooner before the drama comes in.
Get to. And the thing I want to talk about is my perception within myself that I have this old mental habit or this old knot in my head about selling out. Like I have this aversion to this idea of selling out. And I don't know how far back it goes. I find myself thinking about early internet forums. So I consider myself a child of early internet forums. So I used to spend a lot of time hanging out on internet forums and they felt like home to me. And I valued those spaces very much. And I picked up some of the ethos of those forums, right? And I think there's very much this no marketing, no shilling, don't your products on us. Don't sell stuff to people. There was that philosophy, that vibe, and there's a reason for that vibe,
which is still very much in play in Teapot in general, right? Obviously there are people selling things, but there's still this explicit and also under the cover ethos of like, don't grift your shit, right? Don't be a marketer. Even the people in this space, like myself, who are marketers, or fucking Visa, who is a marketer, right? We have marketing backgrounds. Rob Hardy too, Ungated Creative. None of us are very forward about being marketing. None of us are just like full steam ahead with marketing. So there is this large shadow, if you will, around marketing, even among the people who are professionally marketers.
I respect a lot, right? Which is that if a community descends and devolves into people just posting links to what they are selling, basically turning it into a marketing channel, then it becomes spammy, it becomes full of ads, and people don't want to be associated with that, and so they leave. Or and especially the most thoughtful, interesting, compelling, effortful posters, right, on those forums, they leave when they don't like the vibe, because they're putting in a lot of effort, and what is the reward that they're getting for the effort? It might not be financial, right? It's a sense of communion with the community. And so I value that a lot. I feel like, and I hope that if you're watching my videos or you're reading my tweets, that comes through, right? And I'm trying to give more to my spaces than I'm taking out of it, right? So there's this explore, exploit dichotomy. And that said, I think I overcorrected. I think that in my life, I'm overly anxious and afraid and flinch from the idea of selling anything, of asking for money, of pitching my books, my products, whatever. I have a Patreon, and I don't tell people about my Patreon very often because some part of me does not like to be seen asking for money. And when I sit down and investigate it, I'm like, why is that the case? There are people who want to give me money because they like the work that I'm doing and have money and they're willing to give it. And if I let myself receive it, I'm better off for it. And I can pay my bills more easily. I can feel a sense of comfort and lightness that I don't need to stress about money as much. And that frees me up to do the interesting work that I want to do, that there are people who want to see me do it. So there's that voluntary opt-in, win-win, consensual transaction that can happen. And part of my job, I think, as the custodian of me and my body of work, is to help me ask for money. But I'm afraid, a part of me is afraid of being seen as a sellout. And there have been a handful of instances over the years.
Can I just say also, this is literally what I've been working on explicitly for almost 2 years now. To say nothing about the rest of my career, which was sort of also working on this just under the surface. I launched Shift 30 for 30 at the beginning of June, and I sold that out in less than 4 weeks, having spent 10 years wanting to make something and sell something online and never once feeling comfortable about putting myself out there in the way that Visa's describing, right? Because I didn't want to be a sellout. I didn't want to be seen as this scammy marketing person. I was around it, or have been around it so much in the marketing world as a marketer. I see how icky it can be. I can see and I know very well how icky it can make me feel. And I have been so averse to ever having that be the way that I'm seen. And yet over the past year or so, I've actually gotten extremely comfortable with that possibility And I don't know that I am scammy now. Maybe I am. You tell me. But no longer being so averse to that, I suddenly pretty much like out of nowhere realized, holy fuck, I actually have this idea that I'm insanely excited about, that I think will help people, that will actually allow me to feel even more alive and pursue the things that I want to pursue more deeply. I'm gonna fucking make it, and I'm gonna put it out there. And it's sold out. So in that sense, I technically am a sellout as well.
That's where people have accused me of being a grifter, of just exploiting spaces or whatever. And a big part of me thinks it's bullshit, knows it's bullshit, because I know the effort that I put into these things, and I know, I used to be a participant in forums and communities, and I know what I want as a community member, and a very serious community member. When I say serious, I mean a person who relies on the community very much. It's home to me. A lot of people, the internet is just something that they kind of pass through. They turn on Twitter, they post some dumb shit, and they're like, fuck it, I don't care. It's not who gives a shit, it's the internet. Whereas for me, the internet is my home. I feel like I feel a sense of belonging. I feel a duty to do cleanup. I feel like keeping this place clean, and whether it's epistemol, like intellectually, emotionally, I feel a sense of duty to the digital spaces that I owe so much to.
I don't know if Visa and Rob Hardy are like really connected, but they should be, because that's like exactly what Rob Hardy is all about. Making the internet more beautiful, or building a more beautiful internet.
And so my observation was that this whole video could, I guess, be about self-promotion, right? And I have some old notes about self-promotion isn't necessarily intrinsically bad. If you know that you have something that can help people and can be of use, and you've done the work, and you're willing to sit and have conversations with people, right? So part of the problem with spam is that it's insensitive, inert, doesn't care about you, right? If you ever receive like a cold email from someone who doesn't give a shit, and they use this template and they put in your name, and then it's just then they're not putting in any effort or giving it any thought. And I
explained my thoughts on spam in my videos reading Rob Hardy's manifesto. But having grown up in Hawaii, I have a love for spam. But also spam, it's nutritionally fucking nothing, right? It's so, again, I don't know that this is exactly how the term came to be used, but spam marketing, not all marketing is spam, but spam marketing is that marketing which is completely not targeted. You're just on some random giant mailing list, and they send you shit in the mail, and you're like, what the fuck does this have to do with me? There's no nutrition in that, right? If it was well targeted at you and what you want and what you're dealing with in your life, that wouldn't be spam, would it? Because it's nutritive in a sense. But spam mail is high volume, high calorie, with like no nutritive value, basically. That's how I understand spam mail anyway. And I've written a fuckload of it.
To always put in as much effort and thought into my interactions as possible. And I feel like in the early years that wasn't very appreciated by the external world, but I didn't care because I wanted to be that person. And I've since been blessed with friends and peers who do see the effort that I put in and do appreciate it. And I'm very grateful for that. But I still feel that there's still this weight on my shoulders, in my tensions, muscular tension, that oh my god, people are gonna think I'm a grifter, people are gonna think I'm a sellout because I have a book for sale, I have a Patreon, am I? But bitches need to eat, right?
Also, you sell your book, which you worked on for over a year, for what, less than $20? Come on, you can charge a hell of a lot more than that, man.
And I think a common phrase people say sometimes is get a real job. What is a real job? A real job is most of the time you are getting into a contract with an employer, and the employer is providing goods and services to the marketplace, and they are the interface between the consumer and product, right? And this interface is usually abstracted. There's a customer service provider, there is a salesperson wearing a uniform with, whatever. I'm working at a cinema, I'm working at wherever it is that you work, you wear the uniform of the place that you work, and you are a representative of that corporate entity. And that corporate entity doesn't have a soul, doesn't have shame, doesn't feel guilt, it's not a person. And a tragic thing is that a lot of...
Well, let's not forget that the people in it as a collective can feel largely guilty or ashamed of what they're doing, and that plays a huge part in what happens. But the entity itself, sure.
People are more harsh with other people who are trying to sell products and services in the marketplace than they are with corporations. And that's unfortunate because it discourages people from trying. And I figure that if I'm struggling with this, and I'm someone who's very open, I would say I have a pretty thick skin, right? I'm very willing to put myself out there. And even if I'm struggling with this, then other people are definitely struggling with it even worse because they don't have as much experience being so public. They might be more sensitive than me and feel more pain when they get insulted and when they get attacked for this.
Maybe. And I wouldn't say no, but I would also say, Visa, that because you've been on the internet for so long and because you have such a bigger audience and such a bigger reputation as someone who's not grifty, you might be laboring under way more baggage and burdens and tension around being that way than anyone else, right? Because if you do it, you're going to have whatever, fucking 40,000 people pointing their finger at you. That's not easy to imagine. That's like pretty fucking scary, I would imagine. I have less than 1,000 followers. That makes me uncomfortable to imagine, let alone 40,000 or however many you have now.
And I guess part of the lesson there is that being public, and by that I mean participating in the public marketplace, means being criticized for it. And that's fine, you don't have to take it personally, but I have a habit of taking it personally because of my childhood issues, school, my early friend groups, the society that I live in where you're supposed to go through the proper channels and you're supposed to be, you can't have opinions unless you're anointed by gatekeepers in some institution. Like, fuck that, fuck that, right? Like, my wife's been watching some videos of like just churches and then how they ask for money. And it's so much easier to ask for money when you're asking it on behalf of someone else, right? It's more difficult to ask when it's on behalf of yourself. But so theoretically, one thing I could do is I could invent like a manager, or I could invent some third party to handle things on my behalf. And I don't
know what you meant exactly, but when you said manager, the first thing I think of is internal family systems. So I would advise against like building up a whole new psychological part of yourself to like offload and take care of the anxiety around this. But I don't think that's what you meant. Anyway.
The idea of that though, I wanna be here. I wanna be present in all of my interactions. And maybe I'll change my mind about that someday in the future. But for now, when I ask for money, I want it to be with my whole chest. And I get paid pretty well for my marketing consults. I get paid $500 US a session. But part of why I'm able to charge that much is because I am willing to face it. You know what I mean? Like, part of what deters people from... There are people who are equally qualified as me to do the job that I do. in terms of like the technical, practical aspects, but they would not be comfortable exposing themselves to the marketplace where they might get insulted. People might say, who the fuck do you think you are for charging this much money to provide a good service? And so I have found myself in defense of people who charge a lot of money for some stupid shit that nobody wants or nobody should buy. Criticize, like, I'm okay with criticizing people as, I wouldn't buy that. I don't think that's a good service or whatever. But like, when somebody then goes all the way and says, this shouldn't be allowed or this should be shamed and mocked because this person is in the marketplace selling stuff, I then be like, oh my god, I can't believe you're making me defend this person, because even if I don't like the person and I think their service is shit, I think they should have a right to post it for a lot of the times. I guess there's some extreme cases where the thing is so malignant and deleterious to society that it shouldn't be allowed. But like, for the most part, if someone wants to sell some shitty ebook making grandiose promises that they don't fulfill, like, I think that should be allowed. I think overcompensating in the opposite direction does us a disservice. I don't know if I've gotten to say what I want to say, but it is getting longer than I'd like, so.
Let me also say, like, if somebody is doing that within a community, what is going to happen is exactly what you were saying in the beginning about forums that turn into these just like marketing fests, right? People are going to leave because people are encountering this person who's selling a thing with over-the-top promises that don't get delivered upon. Maybe, yeah, they'll make a lot of money, they'll maybe burn through a lot of people, but those people are going to be upset and they're going to be like, actually, this was not worth it. They're going to be talking to each other and that thing is going to get a reputation. That's not to say it's going to go out of business and they're not going to have any buyers anymore, but it's going to develop a reputation without anyone necessarily actively being like, this thing needs to fucking die, right? The vibe of that thing within the community is going to be totally off. People aren't going to want to be around it, so that it happens. And you already described how it happens.
Yeah, I guess I just want to wrap up and talk about. There's still a part of me that feels like a sellout or is afraid of being a sellout, and I want to reassure myself that I put in the work. If this is selling out, I am at peace with it. There's so much worse that I could do. Right? I could be like, my books are called Friendly, Ambitious, Learn, and Introspect. I'm writing about how to be a better person for yourself and for your friends. Like, I'm not selling, how to win big and how to dominate stuff. And like, I could reframe my books to be about those things, but I don't want to. And yeah, and I'm not saying that makes me a better person. I'm just trying to clarify for myself what I want. And I want to live a life that I'm proud of and I'm happy with. And so I'm just investigating out loud what ails me, right? And I think
maybe the answer to this is obvious, but I think an interesting question is to literally just sit with asking the question, could I be proud of reframing my work as with bigger promises in the way you just described? Could I be proud of that? Is it really impossible for me to be proud of my life and happy in my life if I do that?
Feel a bit better having said this. I think I have more to say, so I might repeat myself in a few different videos with a few different phrases, because sellout is one, there's a bunch of others. But that's all for now, and let me know if you have any thoughts or questions. I reply to everything. That's what I do as much as I can, right? And I hope that counts for something. It matters to me. I hope it matters to other people, but even if it doesn't, it matters to me. Alright, there we go. I hope you have a good day, and yeah.
Alright. I also just love that Visa makes these videos outside and you can hear the birds. How beautiful is that? Alright, well, that was that. That was fun. I forgot how much I enjoyed making these, having these parasocial conversations. And if you have listened to this, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts on Visa's point of view here, on what I added to the conversation, what you think about this stuff in general. And regardless, have a great day.